Ninjutso is one of those enthusiast brands that has been around for a bit. There was the Origin X, the Katana, which was one of the first really big and lightweight mice. Then there was the original Ninjutso Sora that was one of the coolest claw grip mice that we ever had back in the days, especially for it being wireless. Then came along the Sora V2 that had several issues, one of them being insane creaking over time because it is made out of polycarbonate. And the other issue being the 8K receiver that didn't come until way more than half a year later. And when you finally got your hands on the 8K receiver, people like me ended up having constant disconnecting issues with it, and it was just pretty much unusable. The next mouse was the Ninjutso 10 that on a lot of units had a really thin top shell that was very easy to crack. And for some reason they decided to go for plastic skates that pretty much everyone agreed that they just feel like absolute crap after a few days. But dare I say that this was their best launch to date despite some of those issues. So I figured after all of these product launches that they would finally nail it with the Ninjutso V3 back when they sent me a unit in February. Well, that was 4 months ago and you're probably wondering why did it take me this long? That is because Ninjutso teamed up together with Pixar in Taiwan to make a new sensor together with them with a new feature that is called a dual optical engine, which apparently has 2 nodes to process the surface area that it scans with the sensor. Now that might sound cool and all, but the firmware that they had for this sensor on the review units back in February, when they were just about to launch the product a few weeks after, was absolutely horrible. You had sensor skipping, your cursor felt like it was on several milliseconds of delay. But here we are, 4 entire months later, the mouse is now out, the firmware issues have been fixed. But of course I will have to disclose that this is obviously a review unit from the initial batch because they didn't want to send out a new unit for some reason. And when I did try to place a order on a retail unit inside of China a month ago, I also couldn't get my hands on it for some reason. I have heard from a few people that apparently the sidewall rigidity on the front is a bit better on the retail units, so take it with a grain of salt when I actually show you the build quality of this mouse. But I also have seen reviews of the brand new release units with the exact same issues as my copy here, so I really do not think that they've changed anything except for the firmware. Before we get into the full review though, I do want to mention that I'm currently live with my subathon over on twitch.tv/jakeu where we got a ton of awesome sub goals, including a giveaway of a full-on custom wrist rest that I will design specifically for you and also print and ship it to you. And I also am hosting daily mouse giveaways during the subathon where you actually get to choose your own mouse from a big list that I have lying around. So definitely make sure to come step by. First of all, I want to tell you what is actually different from the Sora V3 compared to the Sora V2. The new version now comes with SPDT switches similar to the OP18K or the newer G-Wolf's mice. It comes with a brand new sensor that they developed together with Pixar, which is called the AIM Ninja 2 Pro 45K. And in real world use cases, the only real benefit that I can find so far is an incredible increase in battery life and power efficiency. Because on a single charge, this mouse actually has similar power efficiency compared to something like the Viper V4 Pro. Which means that you can use this mouse on a high polling, like 2K polling for example, for over 2 weeks without having to charge it. These skates are now these upgraded 100% PTFE skates with anti-collapse pads underneath. It is no longer a polycarbonate material that just creaks like crazy, but it is now actually just plastic. The inside of the mouse comes with a brand new structure that you can see on screen here. All of the click tolerances have been improved heavily. I cannot move them side to side or anything like that. And also the wobble is very minimal compared to a lot of mice on the market. You get this 8K receiver inside of the box by default, which is definitely nice to see after the entire 8K dongle drama on the Sora V2. The coating does feel more grippy and it doesn't get nearly as oily and dirty as the black unit here on my Sora V2. And in general, this mouse kind of got the 10 air treatment over here. But of course with the new sensor. If you want to know whether it's worth upgrading from the original Sora V2 over to the V3, definitely stick around towards the end of the video. But as you already know, I am a huge shape is king believer and I don't really like to talk about performance. But since this is a brand new sensor that they developed together with Pixar, I do want to talk about it at least a bit, because they claim to have something pretty much the same as FrameSync from Razer. For anybody who doesn't know how FrameSync works, it basically syncs all of the links inside of the chain, which is your PC, then your MCU, and then the sensor frame that gets recorded from the mousepad, all together with just-in-time scanning. That means that in theory, you get lower motion latency, you get a more raw input feel, but what you're gonna notice the most is that it saves power like crazy. As I already mentioned, you can use this mouse on 2K polling for 2 entire weeks. And that is also thanks to their new algorithms that they have with the dual engine, that when you lift your mouse, it detects you lifting the mouse from the surface a lot faster and doesn't draw an enormous amount of power when looking for the mouse surface, like the CR Draco Co 1 for example, that only lasts around 12 hours on performance mode. Are you gonna play better with this mouse? Absolutely not. Is this gonna be an improvement over any 3395 or 3950 cents or anything like that for you? Well, probably not. Is this something that is noticeable in game? To me personally, not as much as the Viper V4 Pro. I still think that there's something funky going on, especially when I move my cursor around on my desktop and draw circles. It kind of feels like there are some tiny erratic movements when I have the max performance mode on with the burst and the dual engine sensor. Is this something that I've ever noticed in game? No. Do I play absolutely phenomenal with it? Yes, I absolutely do. For the unboxing experience, I sadly don't have the original box anymore for whatever reason. If you want to see the unboxing experience, you can check out a video up here in the top right corner from somebody else. Or you could also check out my Ninjutso 10 review because it is pretty much identical. In terms of the build quality, this mouse has a very thin top shell yet again, despite having their boasted highly improved rigidity structure on the inside of the mouse. Like, this mouse literally talks to you. You can flex the front a lot when you press it together like this. The sidewall where you actually do press your fingers on don't feel nearly as flexy. They do feel rigid here. And it is also a lot more difficult to put a dent into the top shell, unlike the Ninjutso 10 Air, for example. And to be completely honest with you, I have never felt any of this flexing in-game. Just because I don't see why you would ever press together the top part of the mouse up here. I have seen reviewers claiming that this has now been highly improved on the new batches, but I have also seen reviewers having the same exact issue as me with their new units. Since it's nothing that you're ever able to feel in game, I would declare this as a non-issue, but I also don't like super thin top shells. The side button tolerances are surprisingly fine. I cannot really press them into the top shell and I don't have any issues with them. The side-to-side movement is well tolerated, and overall I have never been able to make this mouse creak, which is the complete opposite of my Sora V2 unit. In terms of the weight, it is advertised at 40 grams, and on my scale with the stock skates, it comes in at about 43 grams. In terms of the shape, they do claim that the V3 is identical to the shape of the V2, and from my testing so far, it is almost 100% true. There are some very tiny differences, like the scroll wheel being a nanometer lower, and also the click height being ever so slightly lower than the V2. But just by comparing them side by side, I can personally not feel a difference. If you have never tried a Sora before, here is a comparison to the Viper V4 Pro. As you can see, it is sort of similar in size. Here's also a comparison to the Super Strike, where you can see that the overall size is sort of similar, but the Sora does look smaller. And what you're also going to be able to see is that this is a claw-focused shape. The hump is moved towards the rear. The button height is very low. The sides are quite tapered here towards the front. And I would recommend this for any type of claw grip specifically. Obviously, you can use this mouse with other grips, but just keep in mind that this is primarily designed for every type of claw grip. With my hand size and grip style that you can see down in the description below, here's what the mouse looks like for me. I have more than enough space here on the right side. I move pretty close towards the front of the buttons, and my thumb aligns perfectly with the center of the side buttons, with the sensor being ever so slightly lower than that. So if you play an aggressive claw grip, I could see people all the way up to about 20 to maybe even 21 centimeter hands being able to use this. But for a relaxed type of claw grip, if you don't want any overlap with your fingers, 19 by 10 centimeter hands is going to be that limit pretty much. If you do want to palm grip it, you kind of can force yourself to do it if you just collapse your palm onto the back of the hump. And my recommendations are going to be the same here as for a relaxed claw grip. For fingertip grippers, I would just not recommend going for anything with a bigger hump, because when you pull the mouse back into your hand, the hump will distract you or limit you from maneuvering your mouse too much. As already mentioned, the coating has been improved over the V2. I don't exactly know how to describe you the difference in feel, because they do feel similar, but then again, this just feels more grippy. Now, of course, I got the white unit, but even on my white unit, I can feel that this is a lot more clean than what the V2 felt like. And in general, it's just a straight up improvement, and I have never had any issues gripping this thing. The skates are really good on the V3. They're 100% PTFE, they're pad skates, there are no skate ridges. The rounding on them is A-OK. And I do not have any issues with them whatsoever. They're not going to be the fastest skates on the market, but they're going to be good enough for 99% of all people. And in terms of the main buttons, they now use SPDT switches that feel really nice because they're those awesome custom Huano SPDT switches. You get the benefits of them feeling and sounding like a mechanical switch, with the slight latency improvement as well from the SPDT mechanism. The pre and post travel is nicely tolerated, it is not over exaggerated, and you do need some post travel for that switch to bounce back at you crazy style. The clicks themselves are definitely spammable, but they're also nice and crisp and not too heavy or tactile. They're just right down the middle and perfect for pretty much everyone. The tolerances on the side buttons are also fine. I cannot press them into the shell. They don't feel like they have a ton of pre or post travel. And in terms of how hard they are to press, they're like a 5 out of 10. The scroll is spammable. You can still feel the steps. And the scroll click is also not too heavy whatsoever. And as always, here's a sound test and also a direct comparison to the V2. It's just the sensor position. If you don't know what it is and how it affects your aim, definitely make sure to check out a link in the description below. It has been kept the exact same as the Sora V2 as well. So when I grip my mouse with the thumb in the center of the curvature, the sensor is ever so slightly below my thumb. Because the sensor has not been aligned at the center of the curvature, but at the center of the mouse itself. Some people are not going to be huge fans of it, but I also never found it a deal breaker despite personally preferring slightly forward move sensors. However, there is one thing in the WebDriver that might be a bit of a deal breaker for you in terms of the sensor, and we're going to talk about that here in a bit. In terms of the battery life, it is absolutely incredible. You can use this mouse on 4K polling for 1.5 weeks easily without having to charge it, and you can use it on 2K polling with the absolute max performance mode for at least 2 entire weeks. This is all thanks to the frame sync-like technology that they have. And also their dual engine being capable of lifting the mouse from the surface a lot quicker and just cutting off the sensor so that it doesn't draw extra power. In terms of the WebDriver, you can find it here on screen and also down in the description below. They did claim that they have upgraded their WebDriver, but I can personally not see any upgrades here. You can set up to 3 profiles. You can rebind all of your buttons over here. You can also set up macros over in the macro tab if you would like to do so. There's the performance tab where you can enable or disable hyperclick, which is just the SPDT mechanism for the main clicks, so that you can get a tiny bit lower latency on the main buttons. What I really don't like about this is that you cannot disable it for the right click, because normally on mice that have SPDT switches, I only want it on my left mouse button because I don't want to accidentally actuate my right click. The optical engine is the special feature for their specific sensor, and I would just recommend you to turn it on and see how you like the feel of it in game. No matter whether I turn the optical engine to the standard or the burst mode, when I move the cursor around on my desktop, the movements just feel a bit weird. It feels like there's some type of algorithm going on. For the system mode, I normally just set it to the ultra mode, where I still can get up to 2 weeks of battery life. The liftoff distance feels a bit high on the medium setting on most of my mouse pads, so I probably recommend going to the low setting. The slam click filter you cannot fully disable, but I also don't believe that this introduces any type of latency. I just have it at a low setting and I cannot get my mouse to slam click. Sleep time I set to 1 minute, and then there's the polling rate, of course. You can also customize your receiver. You can set it to light up in any color that you want and also do some type of RGB effect. I just turn it off, and you know what the craziest part is? That's already it for the settings. What I am absolutely shocked by is that their WebDriver doesn't have sensor rotation. If you don't know what sensor rotation is and how you can actually benefit from it, definitely check out the link down in the description below. But me personally, I have been using it a lot over the past 2 months, and not having it felt pretty inconsistent with my aim. As always, when you do get your mouse, make sure to go to the settings and upgrade your firmware immediately. But since we have neither XY DPI split, nor sensor rotation, input curves, or even more than just 3 LOD steps, I do think that their settings are lacking compared to the competition. Now, getting into the conclusion, who is this mouse for? And should you upgrade from the original V2? Or should you just go ahead and buy an MChos L7 Ultra Plus? Well, to answer your first question, compared to the V2, this is obviously a huge upgrade. It doesn't creak, it doesn't feel like crap anymore, it doesn't disconnect from the 8K dongle that you probably never ever received because it was that delayed. You get better skates, you get a theoretically better sensor, although I don't know exactly what's going on with that. And you also get a much better battery life and SPDT switches. The click feel is, in my opinion, a big upgrade. And overall, I would say that it definitely is worth the upgrade if you're having issues with your Sora V2 unit or you're simply not happy with it. But here might be the deal breaker. $120 US. This is, according to my memory, definitely the most expensive mouse that Ninjutso has ever released. And at the moment, you can get an MChos L7 Ultra Plus with a 3950 at less than half the price. Not only that, but also is the front of the MChos L7 Ultra Plus fully rigid compared to whatever this is. But of course, you get a Realtek implementation over on this side. You don't get SPDT switches, but you get the latest KL opticals that also feel really good. You of course also don't get the huge power efficiency benefits as on the Sora V3. But you do get a better WebDriver implementation because you do get XY split DPI, you get sensor rotation, you get all that sweet stuff, and you can see my full review up here in the top right corner. As I've already hinted towards, it is not an exact clone of the V2, it does feel ever so slightly wider and a tiny bit less maneuverable. But depending on where you're from, you can even order it directly from Amazon, or you can currently get it at 10% off on MChos' own official store. And I also do want to mention that because it has a 500 mAh battery, which is noticeably bigger compared to the Sora V3, there will be a weight increase of about 5 grams. Because of that heavier battery in the back, the weight doesn't feel as perfectly balanced as the V3, but if you're like me and like to do some tinkering and battery swapping, you can get this mouse down to 38 grams just by putting on some dot skates and a bit of a smaller battery. If you want to know how to do battery swaps, I can link you to a video down in the description below. And I just really do think that the L7 Ultra Plus is still one of the best deals that you can buy. As my final verdict, I think that they did a lot of things right with the Sora V3, but I also do think that this is by far the worst launch that they've ever had. It was delayed by 4 entire months. They released it silently in China without letting the international community know. Us reviewers were stuck in limbo for 3 entire months. We constantly got messaged by Ninjutso telling us that they will release a new firmware for us so that we can update our units, but that just never happened. Up until 1.5 weeks ago when it finally did. Overall, it's a decent mouse. I have no issues with it in game despite me really missing out on the sensor rotation. The mouse feels solid to play with, the coding is great, the clicks feel really good, I never have any slam clicks, and SPDT is just freaking sick. And if you can comfortably afford this mouse and you really want the official product and the official Sora V2 shape, I'd probably say just go for it. However, if you're currently using a mouse that you're already happy with and you don't have any issues with it, please just stick to it. It's not gonna be an improvement for you since shape is king, and as long as you feel comfortable with your mouse in game, you will play your best. That's about it for the video though. Thanks to all my members up here in the top left corner and all my Twitch subscribers on screen. And if you didn't already know, I stream frequently over on Twitch where I unbox new products, talk about the latest tech, grind Marvel Rivals ranked, or play games together with chat. And if you're watching this right now, I'm actually live doing daily mouse giveaways for my summer subathon. We also have a huge list of sub goals with some awesome goals over on the right side where you can win a full-on custom keyboard, mouse, and even a wrist rest. So definitely make sure to step by if you want to have a chance at winning any of these awesome prizes. Thanks again for being here. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys pretty soon. Peace out.